Welcome to another edition of A Voice to the Gentile Church. I'm Jim Wingerter. Next to me is Pastor Roger Diaz. Next to him is Dolores Lowe. So, Kamala Harris, our illustrious vice president, has managed to insult Israel.
Yes.
So I see this as a good thing. You should have saved this for good news.
Well, I think Israel's response was good news, right?
Right.
Yeah, she was speaking. There was a big Independence Day bash at the Israeli embassy last night, and she was speaking. And of course, being this administration, they have to put their nose in everybody's business, right? So in the midst of her speech, she made reference to the judiciary issue that has been going on in Israel since we were there, right? Remember when we were there and there were all the protests going on?
Yeah.
For and against, right? And the funny thing is that Ambassador Cohen said that I think this is the best. He said, the vice president would not be able to quote from a single clause from the judicial reform. I don't know if she read the bills or not. I would guess not.
He's being nice. She would choose to be politically in opposition to Bibi.
Yes, she would.
Right.
This whole administration would.
So in tossing her word salad last night, did she say anything about the so-called Palestinians? I mean, did she?
No, she didn't.
had
She didn't
nothing
bring
to say
that up.
about
No,
it?
she just wanted to bash the.
Yeah.
So now they call the.
So now the hot button issue with Israel is no longer so much the Palestinians, but the political dissent.
Right.
Right. So yeah.
Well, they've taken to calling the Bibi administration hard, far right, and calling Bibi a dictator. Right. That's what they've taken.
So
to
he's
doing
been prime minister for like 20 years off and on.
And
right?
all of a sudden,
he's hard right.
That's how the left
That's the
works.
government he was handed with the British parliamentary system that they function under.
Well, what nobody in the U.S. understands, they hear, oh, Israel wants to change the judiciary and they want to get rid of, that's how what they don't understand is that in Israel, their Supreme Court judges get to pick who replaces them. That doesn't even happen here.
No, right.
Right? They all go through a confirmation process. It's not like I had the job today, and by the way, my cousin Vinny should have the job tomorrow when I leave. That's how it is today.
What incredible propaganda!
Vinny's Italian. I'm sorry.
How effective have they become at propaganda? It's an amazing thing.
Yeah. When you have an ignorant population.
Yeah. Well, propaganda is an art form. It's an ancient. It's an ancient art form. I was doing some research the other night, and ancient Babylonians, they believe in the Anunnaki gods that came down from heaven and imparted wisdom and abilities into humanity. One of those abilities was propaganda, the ability to deceive mass quantities of people. It's in Babylonian, mythology and in Hindu mythology as well. One of the Hindu gods, his specialty was propaganda. Propaganda is an art form, and boy, they're effective with it. I mean, just absolutely effective.
I would love to go down
And
to...
of course, before Goebbels, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It's an
Tell
art
a
form.
lie
And it's ancient.
often
it's
enough
demonic.
and people will believe it. Yeah.
It's
Right.
demonic.
But I would love to have somebody go to UCF with a microphone, interview a bunch of students, talk to them about this. If they even knew about it, they would say, oh, yeah, it's a bad thing. And if you ask them, do you understand how judges get put onto the bench in Israel? I would wager not a single one of them would know.
Maybe political science student, if you
I don't
encountered
They
one.
have to specialize in the parliamentary system
Right.
Yep.
Right.
to really understand it.
Yep.
And plus, Israel's parliamentary system is different. It's unique to Israel. It's not
Right.
like
It's not
Canada
just British.
or Great Britain
Right.
or one of the Commonwealth Islands. It's unique. So amazing.
And then continuing with the bad news in the world. So
Bring it on. We're ready.
sorry.
Get a swig of my H2O.
So the Biden administration just had a big shindig and invited Prime Minister Modi from India, right? Now, this is the same White House that has refused to invite the Israeli Prime Minister, right?
And the former Prime Minister,
right.
President, Prime Minister or President? Prime Minister of
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
Because he was somewhat right of
Yes.
center. He got along well with Israel. I don't have his name right now.
Yeah, the interesting thing about their invitation of Modi is that since his administration has taken over India, persecution of Christians and Sikhs has increased by 300%.
Sikhs are Hindu, and
Yeah.
obviously
Right,
Christians are.
but they're a different sect of Hindus, right?
They're very different.
They're very
Okay.
different.
Right.
They don't worship
Right.
the plethora of gods.
Okay.
So they have been persecuting, and I mean, just last week, I think there were a whole bunch of Christians killed in India, and his administration has said nothing about it. He's been silent, right? Because that's kind of what they support. Yet the White House brought him over, despite not bringing over all these other
Basically,
people.
pat him on the back for.
Yeah, they called India a vibrant economy, a vibrant democracy.
Okay.
Right. And when the State Department talks about it, they talk in terms that India is opposing China, which they are. You know, India is standing up to China
Sure.
simply because China has been doing incursions into Indian territory.
Nepal, yeah.
So they're like, yeah, you know, India is against China, who is trying to position themselves as a world superpower right now, right? Actually, China is really trying to position itself as the only world power, right?
Right. Right.
So it's interesting, you know, that just dead silence on persecution of Christians and other religious minorities in India.
That's an aspect of propaganda, so they know how to utilize it.
Yep.
Oof.
So next, let's go to
So
our...
India has nuclear weapons, of course.
Yes.
China has nuclear weapons.
Yep.
And the whole Nepalese conflict hasn't gone away. So
Right.
the issue in Nepal is really fanning the flames of this conflict.
Yes.
Yeah.
And China, it's scary what China is doing today.
Oh yeah.
So moving to our neighbors to the north, those lovely Canadians, you know.
The
I
Great
don't-
White North.
The Great White North. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Canadian Bacon,
No.
when we decide to invade Canada.
I started to watch it and then I decided
John
not
Candy,
to.
it's a comedy, it's
It
hilarious.
has to be because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was over Canadian bacon, not being real bacon. Anyway, so it's a comedy. And
Now, we might overthrow Canada over Trudeau.
Yes.
That would be a good thing.
But so Canada's been going crazier and crazier and crazier, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that Canada has done is they've put in the most liberal euthanasia law in the world. Right now in Canada, if you're over the age of 18, you can be killed for any reason whatsoever.
Voluntarily. Yeah.
But they have their MAID system, which is it's a branch of their social health, right? Where the government is your health care. There's a branch called MAID, and I can't remember what the acronym MAID stands for. But they counsel people into having euthanasia, being euthanized. That's what they've been doing. That's, you know, they send you to MAID, and MAID just tells you, oh, you know, we could put you to death if you want to. You won't have any more pain, any more regrets, any more anything.
Soylent Green?
Yep, very similar. And then now there has been talk of extending it to all ages, from birth on up, euthanized people, right?
With an emphasis on homeless people, people that are
Right.
hopelessly ill.
Yeah, they just did a polling of Canadian citizens, and a large majority felt that homeless people should just be euthanized.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know, of course, this is Agenda 21. I mean, we've been talking about it since Justin Trudeau has been there as Prime Minister. There's been a huge swing towards Canada fully embracing Agenda 21. The Prime Minister that they had before, who was conservative, happened to be a Christian. Canada
That's
was
great.
not in that place. Yeah,
Right.
Canada was not that. But since Trudeau, and he's been there for what, 5 years, 6 years? They signed up with Agenda 21 right
Yep.
off the bat. And what you're seeing right now are the aspects of Agenda 21. I mean, euthanasia on demand, just all these things are Agenda 21. And that's going to filter across the border, and that's kind of what they're hoping, I guess.
yeah, it's really bad because if an individual, let's say they just go through a bout of depression, right? And they reach out to the Canadian healthcare system, one of the things that they get is MAID, which is medical assistance in dying, and they come out, and of course what their counsel is commit suicide.
Well, they're going to promote it.
Yeah.
They're going to promote it. It's going to be presented on a platform as an option, viable option.
And since last year, suicides have been up 35%.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
That's in Canada?
In Canada.
Well, what about in the States?
I don't know. I haven't checked.
With
Not
COVID,
suicides, euthanasia, right? There's a difference.
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia is up 35%.
It amounts to the same thing.
Okay. And then back to Christianity. So the Chosen is now embroiled in a big brouhaha because they were showing a filming of their filming, right? So they were showing the set. And on one of the cameras was a little pride flag. So that was bad enough in that Christians then took to Twitter saying, this is not aligned with Christianity.
I get it, but to hire someone to work on a film crew doesn't mean that they have to believe the same thing that you believe. If they want the best person for the job and he happens to be gay.
And that's what Dallas finally said. But before he said that, he took to Twitter and slammed all the Christians as being hateful and homophobic, where the real problem is, right?
Well, he's going to lose a lot of his supporters.
Right.
A lot of his financing is going to diminish. Choices have consequences.
And again, just because you disagree with a homosexual lifestyle doesn't make you homophobic.
Exactly. Or hateful. It is a...
Or hateful, thank you.
It is a lifestyle with an inordinate amount of violence, drug use, and death, right?
Instability.
Right.
It's not,
Yet, it is hateful to tell somebody that lifestyle that
is self-destructive.
That is self-destructive is bad for you, right?
Right.
That's considered hateful today.
Well, Christians are concerned about their children, their grandchildren.
Right, exactly.
The idea that somehow our society would be given over to, that agenda, carte blanche, and they'll not be able to do anything about it. That's where we're going.
Right.
It's inevitable that's where we're going. But I think from the standpoint of the Christians that are objecting to that occurrence, they don't want to financially support it. They don't want to defend it in their churches, defend it with their friends and family, defend the Chosen, if the Chosen is promoting that alternate, that lifestyle.
Right. And I agree with you.
It's not even an alternate lifestyle. But.
He hires these people, they're independent contractors, and yes, they can be whatever they are, right? Yeah. But he should not have responded the way he did.
In the process of vetting, this is what the Christians will do. This is where they will come down. In the process of vetting people, employees, you could have made a right decision.
Right.
So they'll have their arguments set. Dallas will defend, and he will lose a lot of his support. And that's the way it goes. Consequences, actions, decisions has consequences.
Yep. And before I go to our final news today, I'm going to give you some happy news. I'm keeping our final news because it ties in with what we're talking about tonight. But happy news. Pizza Hut is coming out with a new pizza.
Oh, good.
And it depends on how you feel about it. It has caused an uproar.
Has
caused an uproar.
Oh, it's caused an uproar.
It is a new pickle-topped pizza pie with ranch dressing, buttermilk ranch dressing sprinkled about it.
Fried pickles or just...
Nope, just pickles. Yeah. Not fried pickles.
Dill pickles?
So, I don't know. To me, it sounds good, but apparently some people really don't like it.
Well, did they try it?
Oh.
They're just going, ew, pickles?
Well, if you hate pickles, then you're not going to like it to begin with.
Yeah.
Listen, I like salt on watermelon, right?
Oh, you are strange.
I like salt on pineapple. I like salt on mangoes. And people that get into that, they say, hey, this is the only way to eat these fruit. So, a pickled pizza might be good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll stay away from the ranch dressing.
Ranch dressing.
It's
Are,
nice.
are we including an Italian red sauce with
no,
that and
no.
cheese?
Well, it's
It's
no red
pizza,
sauce.
No red sauce.
It is dill pickles, buttermilk ranch, and melted cheese.
Sounds good. I kind of like the idea. I might even
I'd be
try
willing
that.
to try it. Right.
I might
Yeah.
even try that.
And back to the news that ties in with what we're discussing today. The
Give me a
city of-
pizza with extra pickles.
No, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce for you. So apparently the city of New York is sinking under the weight of its skyscrapers.
Don't sound good.
Nope, it does not. Well, you know,
I guess I get it. I've lived in New York, and when they build those buildings, they foot them in bedrock. So, but there's a lot of weight on a few rocks, basically.
yeah, the article says that the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building alone are equal to the weight of 140 million elephants. And that's just two buildings, right? Imagine
Right.
the entire sea
Sure,
of
the whole-
buildings.
The
the city's-
entire
the
city, you're
city's
talking about
huge.
3 or 4 billion elephants.
Yeah, so it's
Whoa.
interesting. So, you know, they said that it's sinking under the weight of the skyscrapers, but then they're also saying that it's exacerbated by climate change and the sea levels rising and all
yeah,
that stuff.
we had to have that thrown into
yeah,
the mix.
so
yeah.
that's in there.
It's entirely possible, though.
So they're saying the streets are going to be covered in water like Venice in a few years.
Eventually, yeah, eventually.
I saw.
Which is interesting because Venice is having the opposite problem.
Yeah,
The canals in Venice are drying up.
There's something happening in the world that's amazing, but we'll maybe talk about that. I saw a comparative picture of that New York's Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, of like 15, 20 years ago compared to a picture now, and the person who presented that comparative presentation, the two photos, was trying to make the point that look, the sea levels are the same, but if you look at the picture of Ellis Island of 20 years ago, it was taken during low tide. How do I know that? Because you can see the mark of the high tide. And the current
Right.
picture was taken during high tide. Why? How do I know that? Because you don't see the mark of the high tide. And you talk about a difference of about 3 feet. So yeah, I know without question that the sea levels are rising. It's not happening everywhere in the world. It seems to be happening in waves. The Caribbean, people have sent me pictures of beaches that I grew up on. And yeah, the beaches are good 3 feet closer. 3 feet higher in some places. It's not happening everywhere. And that's because the land is also moving with it. But it's moving like in a wave. The wave has gotten to South Florida, Southwest Florida. There are pictures and videos coming out of Southwest Florida now where the level of the sea is a good 18 inches higher.
But, so for example, right now in Brevard County, we're doing beach reclamation. And we're doing beach reclamation because the hurricane came through and took all the sand out.
Mm-hmm.
So South Florida could be the same thing. The hurricane came through, took all the sand
For
out.
instance, I'm off to the beach next week, and the owner of the house that we're going to be at forewarned us and told us that the high tide is now up on the wall of the seawall, whereas a year ago it was a good 25, 30 feet out. So high tide is now up on the seawall. So yeah, it's happening. I mean, you can't keep denying it. It's
Yeah,
happening.
I'm trying to do an event in Brevard County, and right now I can't do it because they've closed the county because they're bringing in sand to
It's
make up for the
definitely happening.
reclamation.
You can't say it's the hurricanes because we've dealt with hurricanes for decades upon decades and never been faced with the shoreline being up on the coast.
So we have a really good question today. And the question is, with strong earthquakes on the rise, sea levels rising, volcanoes threatening destruction, and killer whales sinking boats, do you think that the planet Earth is trying to say something to humanity?
Yeah. This question was posed in an indirect form at one of the classes, one of the ZEMAC classes.
Okay.
And I thought about it for a while, and I said, you know what, maybe it's something I need to put into a cogent statement and deal with it. Because many people are asking this question. Of course, things are happening around the world that's incredibly unusual. We've never been, I said humanity has never been in a place such as where we are right now. Every point in history is unique to that particular point in time, but this is a different time. We're seeing things that we've never seen before, from our government coming to the awareness or the openness about quote-unquote UFOs. And that's a big issue, right?
Yes,
and from that all the way to the rising sea levels, and beyond that, animals are acting in very peculiar ways. So something is happening. Now, the question, the real essence of the question is, do you think that planet Earth is trying to say something to humanity? All right, so we'll address that. Yeah, there's increase in earthquakes. I tried to discover exactly what the percentage, the rise, the increase in percentages are, and it's somewhere around 300%. Earthquakes are up around 300%, and I think that's really, really low. But what's incredible about that is mega earthquakes, very, very strong, above 8, for instance, on a Richter scale, really where the increase is. Earthquakes are happening. There's now something that seismologists are referring to as swarms, earthquake swarms. Puerto Rico, on the southwestern corner of Puerto Rico, they've been having swarms of earthquakes now for almost 5 years. Inexplicable. Or at least seismologists and geologists are not willing to deal with what's happening there in Puerto Rico. But it's happening. My little island, Trinidad, when I grew up in Trinidad, I lived there for 22 years. And in the last 5 years, there's been these swarms of earthquakes, rapid increase in earthquakes. It's happening everywhere. But what's really troubling about the earthquakes is, in fact, the rise in strong earthquakes, what's called mega earthquakes. Jesus said that there would be earthquakes everywhere. And the actual great earthquakes is what he said, but the actual Greek word is mega.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of a shocker. He said there would be great earthquakes, an increase in these great earthquakes, and the word is mega. So yeah, we're seeing that. That's alarming. What about the rise in sea levels? I understand that many conservatives would not agree with this or try to look past it. You can only do that for so long. We've been dealing with this now for 20-something years. I, only in the last 5 years, have come to terms with this, because when you see the evidence of it, it's hard to dispute it. I spent half of my life as a manic fisherman, and I fished the oceans. And I remember my places where I fished very well. And when you fish as much as I did, you still remember the very locations, the outlines, where everything was, especially if you go about catching bait like I did. You know where everything is.
Right.
Now, I look at those places today, and it's completely different. Everything is higher. Brevard County, even further up. And in Volusia, I see it. Now it's in the southwest of Florida. It's happening. It's real. It's not something you can deny. It seems to be happening in sort of a wave-type effect around the world. It's rising. It's good 18 inches in some places. And so that's real. And what's causing it? Now, of course, the people on the left would like to attribute that to, fossil fuels. The ozone layer, the warming up of the planet, and so on. No, I think that's incorrect. An honest geologist will conclude, and have already concluded, that it's what's happening in the planet's core that's causing the planet to warm up. You have effectively a ball, a sphere, and so much of the interior of it, a large portion of the interior, is molten iron, right? And we already know that the magnetic poles are shifting or acting like they're going to flip, and that's because that ball of iron that is the Earth's core is moving. So if all of a sudden, after thousands of years, you have this ball of iron, molten iron, that's moving, wouldn't that cause friction? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it increase in the mantle of the Earth and cause the Earth to heat up some? Yes. So yes, the Earth is heating up. We know that the Pacific Rim of Fire is much more active, and is tied into earthquakes and volcanoes. Mm-hmm. All these things that we're talking about, earthquakes, volcanoes, rising sea levels, they're all connected. And it has to do with what's happening in the planet's core. What's causing the planet's core to shift like this? My vehicle? Is a battery-operated truck or car or bus going to help this? Of course not. It's bizarre. The whole propaganda thing is so effective. People honestly believe that if they drive a battery-operated car, it's going to solve the issue with the ecology. How bizarre. Because it's going to probably cost more fossil fuels to keep it going.
If it's not solar powered.
Come on.
It's not recharged with
It's
solar
delusional.
power. Then
It's
they're just using
delusional.
fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So yes, the sea levels are in fact rising. No one's happy about it. It's got nothing to do with fossil fuels. It's got everything to do with what's happening on a divine level. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. The planet core is moving, and that's going to cause friction, heat. I mean, I'm not a geologist, but that's pretty simple. You have a degree in engineering, right? Is that pretty simple and straightforward?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
Well, the interesting thing is, you reminded me the Chinese are digging into the Earth's crust, 6 miles in right now.
6 miles is just a tip.
Right. Well, that's where they're in right now. They want to
deep,
go
but
deeper.
that's pretty deep. So you might know about this, or you guys, listeners, might know about this. There's a very ancient map of Antarctica, all right, without ice.
Right. Yep.
Antarctica, just a landmass. Now this is an ancient map that goes back to the time of Plato and Aristotle's, some Sephardic Jew, maritime person, a captain of a ship in the 11th century or something, got a hold of an ancient map that goes back to Greece, that period. And the map shows Antarctica almost identical to the actual landmass. And the only way that they know that the map is identical because they can see or peer through the ice. And they know that, yes, this ancient map of Antarctica is pretty accurate without ice. Tells us at some point Antarctica did not have a covering of ice. So now the ice is melting. It's melting not because of my gas guzzling vehicle. It's melting because of what we talked about. Now, honest geologists and so on, they come to terms with this. So the propaganda machine, this art of propaganda, ancient art of propaganda, will use this to further their agenda, right? And it all points to the globalists, the
Right.
United Nations, and their agenda. What about volcanoes? Right. So is my gas guzzling vehicle causing volcanoes to increase, the Pacific Rim of fire? Of course not.
Right.
It's not causing the earthquakes, it's not causing the sea levels rising, volcanoes. So volcanoes are an issue. I mean, they really are an issue. The two major calderas, there's 3 of them in the world, one in the Pacific as well. But the 2 of them that's becoming very active, of course, is the one in the Atlantic, the one that sits under the Canary Islands. And that's pretty big. It's bigger, actually, than the one in Yellowstone. Now, the caldera in Yellowstone is active. And just recently, I mean, I'm talking now a couple months ago, seismologists and geologists are giving out warnings now, saying that, yep, the signs are there. Everything seems to be pointing to an imminent eruption. And if that caldera goes, it's going to be, I mean, what's going to happen if Yellowstone goes?
So the whole west of the Mississippi of the United States will be covered in ash up to 6 feet.
Yeah.
And everything east of the Mississippi will still be covered in ash. We may be okay down here in Florida because we're far enough away from it that we'll have minimal.
But direct devastation will span
Everything will
Oh,
die.
yeah.
country state.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not a pleasant thing. But yeah, volcanoes they seem to be pointing towards destructive activity. If the one off the coast of Portugal, the Canary Islands, that huge caldera goes, you're talking destruction on a level that's unimaginable. Tidal waves.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, there's going to be pyroplastic flow that will form new landmass, and there will be massive geological changes, plate tectonics. Everything's going to just be thrown into chaos. But the real destructiveness of that caldera is the incredible tsunamis that will occur because of it. I mean, you're talking about,
Sure.
they expect 250-foot waves crashing into the coastlands of the Atlantic basin. So that's not pleasant. That's in fact pretty horrible. Now let's talk about the killer whales. I've been watching this now for about 2 months. I'm not sure if you're following this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's happening? There was one whale, a young male, that got hit with a boat off the coast of Portugal. This one young male took it upon himself in terms of retribution to begin to attack boats. He got hit with the keel of a sailboat, and he got wounded. This is what the actual story is. And this one rogue male decided that he was going to push against the keels of these sailboats. And he did it. He's been doing it for about 3 or 4 years. And there's a pod of whales, of about 20 whales in his pod. So they all started doing it. They all joined in on the action.
Because they learned from him.
Yes.
He's the rogue whale that's doing it in terms of retribution. They're just doing it because he's doing it.
Right.
So yeah, they've sank about 200
Ooh,
boats.
this looks like fun.
They've sank about 200 boats altogether.
Oh,
Yeah. Well,
sank?
200 attacks.
Oh,
But
okay.
they've sank in the last 6 months about 5 boats. In the last 6 months. So yeah, this is happening. This is real. They're going after boats. Right. Has nothing to do with the ecology. It has nothing to
He's
do
just
with.
mad he got hit.
Yeah, he's a rogue killer whale. And the other whales, now whales, killer whales, orcas, are highly, highly intelligent. Their level of intelligence, well, I can say with safety, they're more intelligent than we are.
yeah.
They are.
Right.
Yes.
Because they live in harmony with God's creation.
Right.
Yes.
They know how to have a good time without destroying things. They feed on what's necessary. They don't kill for the sake of killing. They don't fight wars. This is a rogue whale that wants to destroy boats. He's not killing people. People are being thrown into the ocean and the whales are not destroying them. Certainly the whales can destroy them. So this whale just does not like boats. So he's got his group. That's their little clique, their little clan. They're just attacking boats. Has nothing to do with the ecology. So we don't need to worry about that. Yeah, shark attacks are increasing around the world. Sharks are coming in closer to the shore. More and more manifestations of great whites. More and more great whites are showing up closer to the shore. But then we have to keep in mind also that 50 years ago we didn't have cameras. Everyone didn't walk around with a camera.
Right.
So things are happening, but with
People were more intelligent 50 years ago, too.
Yeah. And
Stay out of the water,
You're right.
fool.
You're right.
with the animals, I don't think there is a really blatant, clear development of unusual action. Not with the animals. Except, a few years ago, the buffaloes around Yellowstone Park started hightailing it. The animals have always been more in tune with nature than we are. And why is that? Here's a good question. Why is it that the whales are much more intelligent than we are when we're supposed to be? And why is it that animals are more in tune with nature than we are?
Because it makes people
Stupid, yes.
Yeah. So the huge tsunami they had about 10 years ago in Indonesia, right?
Yes.
Right.
There are incredible stories and even video footage of these elephants that were just hightailing it
For
to the
high
hills.
ground. Right.
Yeah, half an hour before the tsunami came. And I have this picture in my mind, can't get it out of my mind, of the elephants hightailing it to the mountains. And there's this one guy standing on the beach like this with the wave coming right at him. He's just frozen and the wave pummeled him. So it speaks of the reality that we humans are pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're out of tune with nature. The animals are still in tune with nature, but we are designed to be more intelligent, more better stewards of creation. We are to be more in tune with God's creation. Our fingers are to be on the very pulse of God's creation, but we are not. We're quite, again, in terms of our position, our call, quite stupid.
Yeah.
We've been stupefied. And that's because of sin. Like you said, sin makes you stupid. And we're pretty stupid, pretty dumb.
Yep.
So these things are concerning. The first three we talked about, the earthquakes, the sea levels, and the calderas are real. And these things are happening because of what's happening in the core of the earth. So the other part of the question there, do you think that planet Earth is trying to say something to humanity? Okay. I happen to believe that trees, plants, the planet itself are living. They're living things. The planet, but trees and not rocks, but trees and plants and so on. We humans, we are appointed by God to care for God's creation. And this is going to be crazy. I do talk to my fruit trees. That's pretty crazy. I do talk to them. Now that's my thing, and someone turned me on to that a few years ago. Now why would I do something as bizarre as that, right? Because I grew up on an island where I was surrounded by fruit trees. All I wanted was the fruit. Never wanted to talk to the trees. But my own personal sugar apple trees and mango trees, when I care for them, when I prune them, when I water them, I speak to them. Now, not because they're sentient beings. They're not sentient beings, right? They don't have a soul, they don't have a mind. But we are appointed by God to care for them. Our touch, our voice, our presence, they would respond to. I believe that. But are they sentient beings? No. Is the earth a sentient being? No. The earth is not a sentient being. Now, there's an interesting passage in the Bible, Ezekiel chapter 38, where God speaks to the land. He speaks to the trees. He speaks to the rivers, right?
Right.
Ezekiel 38.
Right.
We've read the whole chapter, I think.
He tells Ezekiel to speak to the mountains and the hills.
God through Ezekiel speaks to the trees, the hills, the valleys, the land, the very terrain, and prophesy to it. And God addresses the land like the land is a sentient being. Now, I'm not able to do that. God is.
Right.
You see, I'm not able to relate to God's creation in the way He does. He brought this into being. I'm just a steward. So there's a part of me that when I recognize the beauty of nature, that's lifted. And in a sense, I become one with it. Does not mean that God's creation is a sentient being as the people who are making statements like this. Do you think planet Earth is saying something? No. It's a statement you have to be careful with because it seems harmless. Planet Earth is saying something to us. But the root of that is paganism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be honest about it. The root of it is not new. It is ancient. It is paganism. Right. One of the Greek goddesses, her name was Gaia. And Gaia was the goddess of the earth. And that's where we get the word Gea from, geographical Gea. But we say Gaia, it's Gea. So one of the ancient Greek goddesses was Gea or Gaia.
So this is where we get the concept of Mother Earth.
Right.
Absolutely. And how did Mother Earth come into being? Our friends in the UN was a part of that. These Europeans in the 1800s that were determined to introduce paganism, neo-paganism, into the Western civilization, they gave us the idea of a living earth, a breathing, living, sentient being, a woman, a divine goddess figure.
Right.
So, the worship of the earth is not new, it's ancient, goes back to ancient times, where Gaia, Gea, was this ancient Greek goddess that was worshipped. So, let's talk a little bit about Gaiaism, all right?
Sure.
There is, in fact, a movement. In fact, it's a religion. It is a religion. Yep. It's an ideology. It's spiritual. So it's a religion. I have here Gaiaistic ideology. The belief that Gaia, the planet Earth, is a goddess, a living being that can make decisions based on her own autonomy, her own free will, and so on. So let's talk a little bit about Gaiaism. All right, so planet Earth, according to Gaiaism, is a living sentient being, independent of a creator God, independent of anyone's direction. She makes decision based on her own determination. Gaia, planet Earth, is divine. Earth is a divine because she gave birth to us. She's a goddess. She's not just a sentient being, but she's divine. She's a goddess. Of course, she's female, right? She's a goddess,
Right.
which goes back to the Greek goddess Gaia or Gia. Now, according to their belief system, Gaia is about to take retribution. She's about to destroy the elements on her surface that's bringing about hardship, that's threatening her and threatening her children. Of course, from the Gaiaistic point of view, the elephants and the whales and the animals and the trees and the rivers and the valleys are all her children. Her children. Not God's creation, but her children. And she is going to take retribution on humanity because of it. Not all of humanity. Gaiaism basically says that there are certain elements of humanity, sort of like blights, that needs to be done away with. And these blights, these elements that are destructive to Gaia, are people like us. People that subscribe
We're
to...
the
Imagine
disease.
that. Yeah.
People that subscribe to, capitalism, free enterprise, free market activity. Conservatives are definitely, we're blights. We are definitely blights. And from the standpoint of the radical belief system of Gaia, the only solution is to remove the blight. And these activists, these people that are supporting the Gaia philosophy, and their position is this: if we don't do it ourselves, Gaia is going to do it, and many people will be destroyed if we don't take care of the blight. And now this sounds absurd, right?
Yep.
How absurd is this? But it's real. It's real. All of this is based on the ideology that came about from the United Nations, actually from the Theosophists movement in Europe of the mid-1800s, late 1800s. Madame Helena Blavatsky, that movement, Aleister Crowley, and these people, they were all the genesis of this movement that the United Nations embraced. And of course, once the United Nations embraced it, it becomes global. That's their effect, right?
Yep.
They are a global entity. So the idea that we have to remove the obstacles, the human obstacles on the planet to allow Gaia to breathe and not become so angry that everyone is destroyed, they have to take action. Now, is the United Nations working towards culling humanity?
Oh, yes. They
Of
don't
course.
hide it.
Of course. I mean, euthanasia, that's and what we saw their push with COVID and their threats to bring about even more situations like that in the future. Of course, they are seeing that humanity needs to be brought down to a nice, quaint 500 million.
Right.
Right? We're almost 8 billion soon. So they are seeing that we need to be brought down. And it's about Gaia. The basis of this is Gaiaism. So a certain gentleman, a certain person by the name of James Lovelock, in 1972 presented to one of the very first Earth Day seminars the idea of Gaia. He presented it back in 1972.
And there's the reason for Earth Day.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he presented he projected floated the whole idea of Gaiaistic ideology. And it took on in 1972. The globalists loved it, of course. Why did the globalists love it? You think the globalists are actually concerned about the ecology? I mean, let's be frank.
Nope.
Right.
They're
You
not.
think that the globalists are actually saying, hey, we've got to do something about this ecology because if we don't, we're going to lose? No,
No.
of course not.
Nope.
Of course not. No, they have other agendas that this concept of Gaia or planet Earth being a living sentient being fits into. So they're going to embrace it and utilize it. So this James Lovelock now in 1979 published a book. The book was from what I've read, I haven't read the book. From what I read about the book wasn't particularly impressive. It was very assertive, very doomy. You know, the name of the book was, what's the name of the book? Gaia, Earth's Climate Crisis and the Faith of Humanity was the name of the book, written by James Lovelock. You can look it up. Okay. So a lot of the globalists bought right into that. They saw it as, this is our ticket. This is our ticket. Let's plug this into the propaganda machine, fine tune it a little bit, tweak it, and this is gonna do things. So a certain congressman or senator, congressman.
Actually, he made it to vice president.
Yes, yes. So a certain I think it was
Thank God
congressman.
he didn't make it to president.
A congressman who became a vice president. Mm-hmm. And what was his name?
Al Gore.
And what book did he write?
An
Earth-
Inconvenient Truth?
Yeah. He also wrote a book. I think the name of that other book he wrote was Earth in Crisis or something
Yeah,
like that.
something like that.
I just heard that he created the internet.
That too. He claimed that.
Absolutely.
He claimed that, which made everybody laugh, but hey.
We're still laughing.
Well, he was involved in the ideology, the ideations of the internet before it
still-
came into being.
Oh, no. Oh.
So the globalists love the idea of the internet.
They do, and they love to claim it, but they all
Yeah.
forget that the internet was a DARPA project, which means Defense Research Agency,
Right.
right?
But the UN, but our military, since Eisenhower made that statement, our military has been tied into the global expansion effort. So I think Al Gore is genuine when he says that he had something to do with the formation of the World Wide Web. And that's why we were able to give the World Wide Web, we gave the World Wide Web to the United Nations, didn't
Yeah.
we?
Mm-hmm. Well,
How did we
kinda
end up owning it? Through the military.
Right.
Here's what I think. People like Al Gore and these other insane globalists sat around and they brainstormed. What do we do to bring about more of a cohesive world community? We need something that will pull us together. And some brainiac came up with, let's do something on the internet, with our computers.
Right.
Let's pull together
There
something.
was a void. I said a
no.
long time ago, you had to tap into one-on-one a library like Philadelphia's library in order to get any resources
Right.
whatsoever.
But it started because
with the military.
the
of
military
course, yeah.
needed a way to connect all of
Sure.
their bases
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
share
Right.
information.
So the globalists, and this is what I believe, and this is why people like Gore and the UN can tap into this way. These globalists, of course, were indirectly connected to what the military was doing, and it became well known that the military has this tool, and they sat around in a smoky room somewhere and said, we can use this tool.
Oh, it's unbelievable where it went.
And the idea to take it from the military and then appropriate it towards this globalist movement, I'm thinking that Al Gore had something to do with it.
Well, I know that for as big of a climate change fanatic as Al Gore, by the way, he also said the Earth would end in 10
Of course,
years
yeah,
back in
yeah.
1980
That was all
or whatever.
part of
right?
the propaganda nonsense.
But if you look at his lifestyle, he has this huge mansion in Tennessee that uses an
Of course.
unbelievable amount of energy. So it's climate change for you, not for me.
One power plant just for Al Gore.
Of course. That's part of their operation, standard operating procedure. These globalists. Obama, towards the end of his administration, he spoke nonstop, endlessly about sustainable growth. But then what did he do?
He bought a mansion on the beach
And he flies around in a Learjet.
Yes.
He's
In
the
Martha's
most.
Vineyard.
in Martha's Vineyard.
He drives
yes.
the most expensive vehicles, eats the most expensive food, but he goes around talking about carbon footprint
No
and
one
sustainable
says
growth.
he's the only black guy on
Martha's Beach.
Vineyard.
So,
And Kerry, that's the other biggie, right? And
they're
he
all-
actually said, "Well, I have to fly on a private jet because my time is more valuable."
Absolutely, he's doing more for humanity than the average human being, the serf. So he needs that plane. I'm Jim Carrey.
He's an
Jim
unbelievable
Carrey.
movie.
I'm
Jim Carrey.
So these globalists, let's be frank. These globalists are maniacs,
Yes,
right?
they
They're
are.
just lying maniacs. Al Gore jumped onto this Gaia thing I guess it was floated among the globalists like Gore and others, and they said, that's good, that's a tool, that's our ticket. And he wrote books based on Gaia. He was a big proponent to Gaia.
You know, they wanted to convince the kids, so they remember the Gaia cartoon.
Absolutely, but
Gaia
right
was
now,
a superhero, and
Gaia right now is in the realm of the UFO, the ufologists. They are now talking about, yes, Gaia is a living planet, and these entities are here to ensure that we don't destroy Gaia. So it's mushroomed into complete nonsense. But at the center of the idea that the world is, that the planet is going to react and do something about humanity is the idea of Gaiaism. And the globalists are 100% behind it. And yeah, you know, they're using the internet, whatever tool that they can get their hands on, they're using it to promote their agenda, for sure. Now, let's take a more biblical look at what's happening, okay? And begin to, from the standpoint of the Bible, bring some understanding as to where we're going and what is happening. So, God said very clearly in Isaiah is such a profound prophet, that the world, the planet is cursed. The planet is cursed. And it's going to go through an upheaval. And we're seeing that upheaval right now. So in Isaiah chapter 24, 1-6, Jim.
Behold, the Lord lays the earth waste, devastates it, distorts its surface, and scatters its inhabitants. And the people will be like the priest, the servant like his master, the maid like her mistress, the buyer like the seller, the lender like the borrower, the creditor like the debtor. The earth will be completely laid waste and completely despoiled, for the Lord has spoken this word. The earth mourns and withers, the world fades and withers. The exalted of the people of the earth fade away. The earth is also polluted by its inhabitants, for they transgress laws, violated statutes, broke the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse devours the earth, and those who live in it are held guilty. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men are left.
So in verse 5 where it talks about the earth is also polluted, it's not talking about pollution in the sense that we talk about pollution. Yes, the earth is polluted. There's no question about that. But the pollution that's being referred to here is spiritual pollution, corruption, sin that will run amok. This is what Isaiah saw, that time when things will get to this point, the point that we're at right now. The earth is polluted. Could we do something about it? Yeah, we can do something about it, for sure. But could we stop the process that we're in? No, we can't stop it. We can do things. We can be careful about trash. Yeah, certainly we can do it. And we need to be responsible. After all, we're given care of God's creation. We should be responsible.
Right.
But we're not going to reverse the process. But God is able to do it. Now, I see Isaiah chapter 24, 1-6, in the same way that I would compare someone who lived a destructive life. Let's talk about someone living a destructive life. They consume alcohol, they ride, let's say they're on a motorbike, and they're partying, they're drinking, they're living a licentious lifestyle. And suddenly they're in an accident, they're at the hospital, and then they find out that they've got liver problems because of the drinking and other issues from the lifestyle, the licentious lifestyle that they lived. So they're at the point of destruction, not because of some judgment of character,
right,
but because of the things they actually did. So planet Earth is sort of in this place. We've embraced destructiveness, destructive living, and we've done it since Babel and so on. And so here we are at this point where the curse is upon us because of our choices, right? Choices has ramifications that we talked about. And we violate, and now I like verse 5 in particular in that text. Polluted, not polluted in the sense that we talk of pollution, but polluted in the sense of spiritual corruption. The inhabitants, by its inhabitants, they transgressed laws and violate statutes, broke the everlasting covenant. So naturally, we think of Torah, and that has something to do with it. But this goes beyond Torah. This perhaps goes back to Noah.
Yeah, probably.
And perhaps even
Right.
back to the garden, when we were given our call as living entities on the planet to serve the planet. We violated that. We've gone beyond violating it. We've really transgressed against our appointment. I mean, we really have. When you think about what we do, I think about the way we process our animals for food.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I've seen many videos, and it's still happening at our slaughterhouses, where they would take a sledgehammer and hit an animal above the head, drop it to the floor, leave it there to die, come back later after the animal has suffered to death, and begin the slaughtering process. And that's acceptable because it's all about business. Got to get the meat out. We don't have enough workers. We don't have enough time. And so what has brought all of this into being? Greed. You know, uncontrolled greed. You know, like Paul said, the love of money is the root of all evil. And so we have this. And because of our greed, because of our fallen nature, we're destroying the planet. God is saying because of these things, there's a curse that is devouring the earth. And the end of that, now it says there that the inhabitants who live on the earth are held guilty. Held guilty. We're guilty. Humanity is guilty. And I hate to say this, but when I go to, you know, Outback or something and I get me a steak and I sit there and enjoy it, I'm participating in the overall guilt of it. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't do that, but we have to be cognizant of what's happening and why the earth is cursed. It's because of us. And also, Jim, in Isaiah chapter 24, 19 to 20,
the earth is broken asunder. The earth is split through. The earth is shaken violently. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard, and it totters like a shack. For its transgression is heavy upon it, and it will fall, never to rise again.
That's pretty blunt. That's pretty frightening. But this is the words of Isaiah. This is the word that God spoke through Isaiah. And this has happened. This is coming. You know, if you take what's happening with the planet, and you don't hear much about this anymore, but the last I checked, best as I could, it continues. The planet core is shifting. It's bumping like it's going to shift and create a complete revolution of the Earth magnetic core. You know, the poles. So if that happens, there are varying opinions about what the effects are going to be. Some opinions are saying, well, we won't feel too much of an effect on the surface. It'll just be that the magnetic poles of the Earth will flip, and there will be some sort of an effect. We'll feel nothing. That's what some people are saying.
No, we'll feel something.
The extreme optimists are saying that we won't even know it. Others are saying that there will be an upheaval, plate tectonics, volcanoes will just erupt everywhere, earthquakes on a level we've never had before, we've never seen before. I tend to believe that. Why do I believe it? Because the Bible says it? Yeah. Also, we're seeing it already. The molten core of the planet is just shifting like this, and we're seeing increasing earthquakes, increasing volcanoes, mega volcanoes. We're seeing all these things happening. So if it made a complete revolution, yeah, the logic is that we will see an upheaval on the planet.
So not to, I guess, personalize the planet, but each time that man has committed great sin, when sin has reached a peak where God doesn't want it anymore, the planet pays a price. That's what happened at the flood. That's what happened at Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Yeah.
Everything changed.
Yeah. Sodom and Gomorrah. And other times, other places as well. there are, of course, the legend of Atlantis, right? This people that lived out in the Atlantic Ocean, right next to Cuba, on the southeast corner of Cuba. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, there's those.
They've found a complete remains, pyramid streets.
Yep.
I mean, it's underwater. I think like it's about 200, 300 feet down. Not too deep, but it's there. So the myth, the legend of Atlantis, there's some reality to it. What's the story of Atlantis? Well, they lived lavishly. They lived a very advanced lifestyle. And the gods, became annoyed with them and sent a flood and destroyed the whole thing. Okay, so that ties into the biblical narrative of the flood.
Sure.
So I am personally convinced, and there's evidence of it, but the entire planet was inhabited in the pre-flood civilization.
Yep.
And we lived very advanced lives. We used stones, massive stones, to build structures. We didn't use brick. When did we begin to use brick?
Babel.
At Babel, and it's very distinct, right?
Yep.
Man began to make bricks. Why? Because we could no longer use the massive stones to build anymore. Why not?
Didn't have that technology anymore?
Yeah.
One, also something else. Think
The
about it.
Nephilim were gone.
The so-called giants
Yes.
Right.
that were on the earth were unable to assist in the
Right.
building of these structures. I believe that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were built before the flood.
Mm-hmm.
And
So those stones at the base of the Western Wall and on the Temple Mount are huge.
huge, massive. But
You think that was a
No.
structure before?
No. They are cut by Israel. The stones that are highly questionable are stones such as what you find in Ndepi Tepi, places where the stones are massive, but they're almost precision cut.
Right. Okay.
And you look at them and you say that's not done with a tool. The way that the edges are cut and everything's fit together perfectly. You see, the stones under the Temple Mount are very crude.
Okay.
You can look at them and say, yeah, I can see how that was cut. They're not perfectly symmetric and so on.
Okay.
We're talking about at Ndepi Tepe and Machu Picchu, not Machu Picchu, but areas in South America where they have these incredible structures with massive stones, tons upon tons of stones, but they're precision, precisely placed and cut and positioned. I don't think we did that. I don't think man did that. I think in the pre-flood civilization, these fallen angels, remember that the fallen angels were on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
They were physically stomping on the earth, and their offsprings, the demigods, the Nephilim, were also with them. So they were doing incredible things on the earth.
Well, the book of Enoch says that they came to the earth and they taught men
Technology, how to build
Right.
and how to do all these things. So yeah, I believe that is in fact the case. And these structures are still there today. So ancient civilization, they were much more advanced than we think.
Mm-hmm.
But God destroyed all of it
Right.
because that civilization needed to come to an end. He sent a cataclysmic event, which was that flood. And the evidence of the flood is everywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honest researchers and scientists are coming to terms with that. For instance, in the Gobi Desert, northern China, the Gobi Desert is high. It's a plateau. It's very high above sea level, and it's called the steppes. The area around it's called the steppes because it kind of goes up like this to a high altitude. The Gobi Desert is the premier place to find the remains of dragons. And for centuries, the Chinese have been going up there to get the bones of the dragons. Bones. We call them dinosaurs. They call them dragons.
Okay.
So in the Gobi Desert, you have sort of pools of remains. The paleontologists, they would all concur that when they discover the bones of what we call dinosaurs, they're in massive pools. When I say pool, an area concentrated, and they're on top of each other, they're all over.
Right.
What happened? The only thing that could have caused something like that was a flood, or is a flood. Think about it. If you have the water rising, the animals are stepping.
Are all moving.
They're
Yeah.
going up the steps, what's called the steps, and then all of a sudden they're on that plateau. The water comes up, and it comes up, and the animals are just fleeing from the water. Eventually, they coagulate. The water covers them, and then the dirt and the mud and the silt covers them. So now we go. The Chinese have been doing it for centuries. They go up to the Gobi Desert. They go up with their shovels and their picks. They dig down about 10 feet. There's a dragon bone. It's good for whatever. Good for an aphrodisiac or something. Let's get it. Let's take it back to China and grind it into powder. But we call them dinosaurs.
Right, okay.
So yeah, there was a cataclysmic event where God destroyed everything.
Because they're a very dragon-oriented
They are.
culture.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
it's all about the dragon. All about the dragon, for sure. Not only the Chinese. I mean, let's be frank.
Right.
The Indians,
Oh,
Right.
the
okay.
Hindus.
Yeah.
They all lift up the dragon. I mean, for sure. The
The old
Mesopotamians,
The
the
old
Babylonians, and the Mesopotamians. Their primary god was a dragon,
Yep.
a red dragon. A red dragon. Does that sound
Right,
familiar?
right.
Yep.
So, anyway, so God is going to bring about this conclusion again, where He will move to humble humanity by striking the earth. The earth belongs to God, and God's going to strike it. He's not striking Mother Nature, Gaia. He's striking the earth because of man. Man has brought this upon themselves, right? So we have to keep that in mind. So let's look at the judgment aspect of this, Jim.
Sure.
I'm going to say it's correction. Judgment is such a harsh word, and if you're sensitive as a Christian or even a non-Christian, if you're a woke individual and I say God's bringing judgment, that will cause you to blow your stack, right?
Right.
If I approach someone who is woke and highly liberal and I say, well, there is a God and He's bringing judgment, well, yeah, it's on, right? It's
Yeah.
on. But the truth is, God is bringing judgment. That judgment is not based on anger. That judgment is based on correction. It's like, how many times have you corrected your children?
All the time.
How many times in anger? Don't answer the question. So the ideal approach to correction is to do it but without anger. To do it level-mindedly, level-headedly, to do it systematically with purpose in mind, without anger. That's a tough thing to do. God is angry. You know, Jesus comes to press the winepress of the fierce wrath of God the Almighty. He's angry. But He's angry because of man's sin. He's not judging man necessarily in anger to just bring destruction. He's correcting what has been made wrong.
Okay.
And that's what He's doing. And He has to. If God does not correct this, what happens?
The world suffers even more.
Potentially complete destruction.
Yeah.
If you have a teenager that's self-destructive, do you say, here's the key to the alcohol cabinet, here's the key to the car, here's the key to the boat, go do whatever you want? No, you don't. You take measures to stop it, and it's correction, right? So
Right.
God's going to correct this. So in Isaiah chapter 24 now, 21 to 23, same chapter we're looking at.
So it will happen in that day that the Lord will punish the host of heaven on high and the kings of the earth on earth. And they will be gathered together like prisoners in the dungeon and will be confined in prison. And after many days they will be punished. Then the moon will be abashed and the sun ashamed. For the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and His glory will be before His elders.
So God will bring judgment. Who's He judging? The host of heaven. Why is He judging the host of heaven? Because of what's happening on the earth. Of course, the host of heaven that's being referred to here is not the heavenly divine host of heaven. It's referring to the fallen angels.
Right. The 1/3.
Right. And their offspring, of course, but the kings of the earth. So in Revelation chapter 19, we see that Jesus comes to press the fierce wrath of God Almighty, King of kings and Lord of lords. The subsequent verse says that the kings of the earth and the rulers of the earth will assemble against Him. So yeah, God, by bringing judgment, will attract the resistance from planet Earth, the kings of the earth, the great men, the rulers, the Al Gores and the all of the rulers of the earth will assemble against God, and they will seek to make war with him. But God will bring judgment upon them. But what I want us to see here is that in that reference, it also points to the reality that this is about God's reign in Zion. For the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and his glory will be before his elders. So, the hope of this mess that we're in right now is Zion. The hope of Zion is that God will send his great king who will reign in Zion and put an end to the decay, to the horrific behavior of humanity and the decay that we're bringing upon God's creation. He has to. If he doesn't, we're doomed. Mm-hmm. And so he's sending the king of Zion to reign in Zion and bring about Zion. Zion is a state of being. It is a place. It is even a people, but it's a state of being. The Zion that the Bible refers to is, in fact, God's kingdom, the millennial kingdom, when God will reign in the earth. Paul saw this. He saw this. Before we go to Paul, Jim, read Zechariah chapter 14, verse 5. What is Zechariah chapter 14 about? It's about the coming of Messiah, right? There's a great battle in Jerusalem, what we call Armageddon. In chapter 12 and 13 and chapter 14, the Messiah puts his foot on the Mount of Olives. The valley splits east to west, and he sets up a kingdom in the earth. That kingdom is so wonderful, wonderful, causes you to wonder that the Gentiles will come up to Jerusalem every year to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacle. That's how powerful this kingdom is. But let's see in Zechariah chapter 14 what it says, verse 5. And in regards to the solution to this great problem.
And you will flee by the valley of my mountains, for the valley of the mountains will reach to Azel. Yes, you will flee just as you fled before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him.
The holy ones will come with him. What's he referring to? The holy ones? Who are the holy ones? Let's also, while we're at this, let's go to Joel chapter 3 real quickly and read a simple reference in Joel chapter 3. Who's coming with it? The holy ones. In Joel chapter 3, Joel is talking about Armageddon in chapter 3, verse 9 to 17. And he's talking about that time when God will bring about judgment. It says, proclaim this among the nations, prepare a war, rouse the mighty men. Let the soldiers draw near, let them come up. This is Armageddon. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hook into spears. Let the weak say, I am a mighty man. Hasten and come, all you surrounding nations, and gather yourselves there. Bring down, O Lord, your mighty ones.
There it is again.
And there's another reference in Daniel that points to that. Of course, we know Revelation chapter 19. We've read that on this program, infinitum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the captain of the Lord's host, the Melchizedek priest, the great Redeemer, Messiah comes, and he comes with an army, dressed in white. And they come, and what are they coming to do? To press the fierce wrath of God the Almighty, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. They're coming to wage war. That's what it says in Revelation chapter 19. So God is bringing about judgment. He's going to send his son. His son will come with a people, a resurrected people, the mighty ones. And we will bring about order on this planet. That's the solution. That's the hope for humanity. That God will send his Messiah, his son, together with his brothers and sisters, the other sons and daughters of God. Because that's what we're going to be, sons and daughters of God. So let's see what Paul says, Jim, in Romans chapter 8, 18 to 22. Romans chapter 8.
I got it.
Mm-hmm.
For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subject to futility, not of its own will, but because of him who subjected it.
So who subjected creation to futility? God did.
Right.
For what purpose? In that he would bring about the redemption of creation.
Okay.
And all of the creatures, all of the planet, and even humanity. So go on.
In hope that the creation itself also will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers in pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body.
So, I mean, it's hard to not recognize so clearly that Paul is addressing the state of creation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
At his time, how much worse is creation now
Right.
than it was at his time? I mean,
It's much worse.
Much,
and
much
I
worse.
do. I find myself sometimes agonizing over the disorder of the world we live in.
I do it a lot. Remember, I was a Advent fisherman. I love the ocean. I loved getting out there at 2 o'clock in the morning and spending 3 or 4 hours just catching bait. Just wading around in the ocean catching bait. And then going out and catching fish, catching dinner. I loved it. I loved nature and other things I did that reflected my love for nature. So when I see what's happening, when I go to those same places that I went to 30 years ago, and the water is no longer clear, but it's completely black, brackish. There is no sign of life anywhere. It troubles me. It points to the reality that we are, in fact, wrecking God's creation. Paul is saying that the solution to the woes of creation is the sons of God. Of course, it's also pointing to the coming of Christ. Bring down, O Lord, your mighty ones. Put an end to this madness, God.
Right.
Bring them down. Let this come to an end. Let it come to a head. Jesus, the Zemach, the branch, he's the one that will bring this to a head. And we will come with him and do this. Now, I said the word Zemach, but the very first time that the word branch is used to personify a person, it's not the word Zemach, it's the word Natzer. So the word Natzer is used the very first time we see the word branch in English used concerning Jesus. Later on, after this reference in Isaiah 11, the word Zemach is used. So the very introduction of Jesus being the branch, the stem of Jesse, the shoot of Jesse, the word Natzer is used, right? So I'm going to read in Isaiah. Let me read this, Jim, in Isaiah chapter 11.
Sure.
Here is the conclusion. Here is the solution. Here is the end of this incredible condition that humanity is now in. Yes, earthquakes, sea level rising, volcanoes, caldera, possible eruptions, killer whales flipping boats. So question, in God's perfect creation, would a killer whale have to influence his pod to go flip boats?
No.
No, of course not. But they're doing it. All right, so here is the end, where God brings about redemption, sends his son and the sons of God to reign in the earth. The birth pains are over. And this is what we see in Isaiah chapter 11. I'm going to read 1 to 9. Then a shoot will spring forth from the stem of Jesse, and a Natzer, a branch, from his roots will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. Who is it referring to? Jesus. Mm-hmm. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord, and he will not judge by what his eyes see, nor make a decision by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he will judge the poor and decide with fairness for the afflicted of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. You see that? He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. The word of God is preparing this judgment, this correction. The word of God with the rod of his mouth. And with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Also, righteousness will be a belt about his loins, and faithfulness a belt about his waist. And the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. And a little boy will lead them. Also, the cow and the bear will graze. Their young will lie down together. The lion will eat straw like the ox. The nursing child will play at the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child will put his hand in the viper's den. They will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers the sea. This is the condition. This is redemption. Mm-hmm. I personally believe, and this might be up for debate, but I personally believe that verses 6 to 9 is referring to one mountain. In my holy mountain, it's referring to Judea, Samaria, which is one mountain, right? One mountain range. Mm-hmm. We went from, all three of us, we went from the Negev in the south to Kedumim, which is almost the end of that mountain range. So we basically traversed the whole mountain range. We did that in a few hours, right? It's not a very large mountain range. That's God's holy mountain. Why? Because 90% of the Bible are based on narratives that occurred on that mountain. God said to the mountains of Israel, he was talking about Judea, Samaria. He spoke to the mountains. He promised the mountains that your people will come and you will blossom and you will prosper. So God is speaking to that mountain. I believe that in all the earth, during the millennial kingdom, there is one mountain where this will occur. And it will be an example to the rest of the world. In other words, this little mountain range, Judea, Samaria, the wolf will dwell with the lamb. This will happen there. Redemption will happen there. Why would this be? Why would it occur on that mountain only? Because Jesus is there together with the church. It is Zion. I want to declare that that entire mountain range is Zion. Zion is a place. It's a physicality. It's a land. But it's also a state of being. That whole mountain range will become Zion. And the animals that are there will not hurt each other anymore because of the presence of God that's there in Messiah and in the sons of God. And it will stand as an example to all the nations. So mountains in the Rocky Mountains, right? The steppes of China, Mongolia. This will not necessarily happen there. It could, but it will not happen there. It will happen in Zion. And Zion will be again an example. So the nations, right? So there are mountains in, what's the name of the mountains in Europe?
The Alps.
The Alps, right? The Alps. Mm-hmm. So the French would look at what's happening now. Why did I say the French? Okay, so the Germans.
Yes.
The French and the Germans and the Swiss.
Right.
They would look at what's happening in Zion and they would say, there is our example. Why can't our cow not graze with the bear? Why can't, and so this will become an inspiration, in other words. Zion will become an inspiration. The law will go forth from Zion and the word of God from Jerusalem, but Zion will set the example for the world because God has redeemed it. He has redeemed the planet. And he's saying what's happening here in Zion can happen everywhere in the world. Of course, in the new creation, that's what we have.
Right.
How do we know that? Because it basically says that. But ultimately, man will choose not to have that state of existence. Ultimately, man will choose to form a rebellion and a movement against God again, which is Gog and Magog. All right, so the point here is that what we see here in Isaiah chapter 11 to 9, where the Natsu, the Zemach, the Lord himself, Jesus himself will reign. Of course, he's going to reign with us in the earth, will bring about redemption to creation. Paul said it. All of creation, the whales, that particular whale, rogue whale that started sinking boats and his buddies, they're waiting for the sons of God. The calderas are saying, if they don't show up real soon, we're going to have to pop here.
Yeah. Yeah.
The planet's core is saying, I'm just being facetious, but the core, that molten core of the planet is flipping, saying, come on, we need the sons of God here. I'm going to do a complete backflip if they don't show up. So it's happening. And the solution is God's children, sons and daughters, with the Messiah showing up. And there's a wonderful wedding that will occur here on planet Earth when it happens. Creation is awaiting this wedding between the bride and between the Lamb. And because it speaks of redemption. It speaks of redemption. So, Gaia, planet Earth, not a sentient being. The globalists are crazy. Al Gore, a lunatic. and these people that are floating these ridiculous ideas are nuts. My Dodge Caravan is not polluting the planet, not destroying the planet. The planet is going through birth pains, right? That's the point. The planet is going through birth pains, and we need to see it. What can we do in response to this? Well, first of all, we have to know what's happening, be able to understand what is actually happening, and not get caught up in the lies, but also don't live in denial as a good conservative and say, well, these things are not happening when they are happening. Be squared away on the reality that God is going to bring a solution. He has the solution. He's going to introduce that solution. And Jesus is the solution, quite bluntly. The Messiah of Israel, Yeshua, Jesus, is the solution, and we are included. We're a part of the solution. We don't want to be part of the problem. We recognize the problem. We recognize that there are people that are determined to be a part of the problem. I just want to say this to our Christian friends. Don't stick your head in the sand and say, okay, I can just pretend that this is not happening, or I can go run off and live on a hilltop somewhere and avert some of this, because you're not going to avert it. You're not going to get away from it. You're just not going to get away from it. You have to face it. You have to be a part of the solution by being a son of God. How am I a solution? How am I going to be a part of this great fix? By being a son of God and functioning that way here and now. It's the only way. It's what I choose to do. I'm upset about the ecology. I'm upset about it. I am. I'm not going to wear a witch's clothes, outfit and go dance around a tree or some crazy thing. You know, I'm not going to sacrifice a frog or something because there's no hope in that. I'm going to stay faithful to God because I know that He brings the solution. And with that, I close my Bible.
Okay. And that's our program. If these questions raise other questions in your thinking, you're at liberty to share them with us. The easiest way to do that is to email us at voice@buildupzion.org, voice@buildupzion.org. And until next week, Shalom.